Oh, we actually had a great male audience. Huge.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so.
Okay, looks all wrong. You're mic'd.
What?
You're mic'd.
Oh, we good?
We're good.
All right, let's go ahead and get started then. I do encourage you to move up because it's a small group and then it's easier to have conversations.
But I'm so comfortable.
I know, they do put the couches in the back.
We'll just be talking like we're playing tennis.
Why don't you come amongst us?
Oh,
Not
very
Benioff
nice.
style.
So I'll sing Kier down the aisle every now and then. All right. So we're going to spend the next 20, 25 minutes talking about what male allies are and how to be a male ally. It's not a word of caution or anything. This is not a slam against men. It's basically, you might be as confused sometimes as we women are about what does it mean to be a male ally. How can you help? How do you do it? So we'll give some practical tips on what to do to be a male ally. I'll do quick introductions. My name is Angela Mahoney. This is the second time I've given this presentation. I think it's an important topic as a woman in tech to help foster men in tech and how we can all work better together. I've been on the platform for about 12 years since I came back to it, and currently co-lead the Portland Salesforce Developer Group, the Women in Tech Group. I'm a 4-time Salesforce MVP, and I co-lead and co-founded RAD Women, which is an organization where we teach women Apex for strong admins. And then I also do a conference similar to this geared towards developers in Portland in August called Forcelandia. So as you can see, Salesforce is kind of my passion. That's all I do. I don't do laundry or anything else anymore, but I I just asked my husband. And then Kier.
And I'm Kier Bowden. I'm not on the slide, and I'm not really going to say anything about myself, because part of being a male ally is realizing that it's not all about you, and you have to shut up and listen to other people.
And that's basically the presentation, but now I'm going to draw it out a little bit more, okay? To start with, you're not going to walk out of this session being a male ally. In my opinion, it's a journey that you need to start on if you're interested in it. There's an awareness process. You're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. I don't know everything either, but it's definitely a process. And this is a good first start to start your journey on what it is to be a male ally or become one. So if we think about where we are today with gender bias in tech, and clearly, there are other things to talk about when we've got different smaller groups that are marginalized in technology, but we only have 25 minutes, so we're focusing on gender gaps. We're in the news a lot, right? Gender in technology, women in tech, there aren't enough, what do you do? There's kind of a backlash happening to a certain extent with the pinkification of tech, if you've heard about that. Not enough women in tech, so let's like slap a butterfly on the slides and call it, good and inclusive. But it's a little bit more than that. And now we've seen with the Google memo that came out, was that 2-3 months ago, he's suing now. He's suing for discrimination against males. So the pendulum is just going back and forth. It's very confusing. Do you listen? Do you not listen? Do you open the door for women these days? Do you not? And sometimes we don't know, and women will tell you different things. So as Kier said, and you'll hear this a lot, the best thing you can do is start listening. So when we look at actual hard numbers, these are produced by the different companies of where they are with diversification in regards to gender. And you'll notice when we're looking at percentages of women, some companies will say, yes, we've got gender parity, but generally that is not the case. If we look at the yellow numbers, for example, across Google, Apple, Facebook, they're running in 30% of women in total numbers in their companies. But if we start breaking it down into leadership, which is the blue, and tech jobs, it goes down. Women become more and more scarce. So our current snapshot of where gender is today in technology is kind of bleak. Where it used to be, when we look at a pipeline piece, so we don't have enough women, the pipeline is starting to decrease. National Science Foundation of the United States, the American Bar Association, and American Association of Medical Colleges reported that over the last approximately 30 years, when we look at who is receiving degrees in computer science, the number of women has actually been declining. So while other STEM careers are continuing to increase, we've dropped in STEM. So there aren't enough women in tech today. The pipeline is not looking very good. And then of those that manage to make it all through, women tend to drop out at over 2 times the rate of men in technology. What this means is, if you look at the first 10 years of somebody working in technology, at the end of 10 years, almost half of women drop out as opposed to about 20% of men.
And what really concerns me, I think, from a purely selfish point of view, so I'm CTO of a Salesforce partner, we need more developers, we need more technical staff, so why don't we include the other half of the human race? That would make my job a hell of a lot easier. So obviously the percentages are still very low. What was particularly concerning in the pipeline was the fact that it's gone flat. That's, with all, I'm sure over here we maybe weren't doing too much, but from here on in, we've been, trying to do quite a bit, and it's not really doing anything. And then losing people out of the workforce after a period of time, great, we've just spent maybe 5 years training them up, getting them into the right position, and then they're gone, and we have to start again. We have to go and look for someone else. So it's a win-win situation if we can start getting more females involved in the technology side of things.
Right. And I can tell you in my experience, I managed a Salesforce platform and a dev team for 5 years. When I chose to leave, for some reasons that we'll talk about, I took a lot of knowledge with me. Why? We were agile, we didn't document, so everything lived in people's heads. So it's a huge loss of knowledge when women walk out the door, because we have a lot of stuff that we don't write down, men as well. And when you talk about pipeline, I have 2 daughters, and I'm very concerned and interested in what their environment is going to look like when they enter the workforce. My middle school daughter has been doing Lego robotics for quite some time, and when she switched to middle school this last year, she wanted to quit. Why? Because of the 20 people in her Lego robotics class in the 6th grade, she was the only girl. And she did not like going into that room all the time and being the only one that was focused on that work. So the pipeline is not looking good. There are lots of programs to approach it in high school, but high school is kind of too late when we're looking at starting at the very beginning of the pipeline. So why do women leave? It's kind of easy to say we're having babies, we're starting families. Yes, that's part of it. There is a pull there. But in a survey, I think this was the University of Wisconsin back in 2011, 27% of people said, yeah, it is work life. We want time with our families, right? But that means that there's 73% cited another reason as their major factor in leaving. From organizational climate, don't like where I am, don't like my boss. I get the crap jobs. My male coworkers earn more, which as a manager at one of my companies, that was actually true, and we were working to bring parity. But there was a $10,000 spread between developers with the same skill set. Not cool. So we tend to leave for other reasons in the vast majority of the cases, and this is what we have to work on tackling. Okay? So, as Keir mentioned before, does it really matter? Yes. Yes, it does matter. Why? Because if we ignore everything else and hold it constant, generally about 50% of your purchasing base or your user base is going to be a woman. Okay? We make decisions, and we are going to be the ones that are going to be deciding. But if the products that we're buying, if the software that we're buying, if the solutions that we're buying are made by men, there is a chance that you're going to miss something. And fundamentally, it's all about the bottom line. If you want to maximize your growth, you really need to understand and serve the populations that you're targeting. Okay. So who can be an ally? A good one is standing right there, if you think about it. Really, fundamentally, anybody can be an ally. In this talk, it's about gender allies, but you can be allies to different religions, maybe to somebody with disabilities. Anybody can be an ally. But at the top level, basically, if you're a man, straight, white, cisgender, speak English, wealthy, and I know we all differentiate between that, but generally in the Western Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, we fall into that wealthy category. No disabilities, you're probably in a really good spot to help other people.
And helping other people doesn't mean that somehow that diminishes any of your own achievements. It doesn't diminish your own capabilities. You may feel that you've never really been given any kind of a leg up, and you've earned it all through your own abilities, etc. But kind of all these things have actually been helping you quite a bit in the background without you really realizing. So recognizing that doesn't make you less of a person. It just kind of means that you appreciate that not everybody is coming from the same place that you are.
Mm-hmm. All right, so how do you be one? We've got 5 or 6 different ways to approach this. Starting with, listen to women's stories. I know it's a generalization, and it's funny to say women talk a lot, right? However, we do have things to say. My story, Keir's story, all of our stories are valid, but they are going to be different. And one of the fundamental things that a man can do is listen to what a woman is saying. Where did she come from? What did she have to overcome that maybe you didn't have to overcome?
I'd say this is the key thing for me. And I wouldn't say, at the moment we're talking from a kind of male-female point of view, but actually just listen to people's stories. Just, shut up for a minute. You may think you've got something great to say, and that's awesome, but there'll be plenty of time for you to say that. It doesn't hurt you just to sit quietly, listen, and maybe think about what someone else is saying.
Yeah, and for anybody's story, it's easy to pretend you're listening and say yeah, but I had to do this. Yeah, but I walked farther to school. Yeah, but my shoes fit worse. that doesn't mean anything to the other person, because it's not about what you had to overcome, it's what the other person had to overcome, and that's the listening part, and that's the hard part. But it's the best starting part, is to try to understand where the other person's coming from. Okay? Another thing, this might resonate with women, repeat women, but give them credit. I've sat in countless meetings, and some of you might nod, of I'll say something, and then 2 or 3, 4 minutes later, my male colleague will say the same thing. My boss was like, and this is one reason I quit, "That's a great idea, Dawn." I'm like, wait a minute. I just said that, and actually I cited that when I left. I said, because you didn't listen to me. And he, about 2 weeks later, after he got over it, he said, "You're right, I didn't, but it was too late. I'd moved on." But it's very common that this happens, and studies support this, that women can say one thing, and a man can say it again a few minutes later, and it's listened to the second time. So what's important is to listen to women the first time.
And also, if you're a male ally and you hear somebody doing that, the thing to then say is, "But that's what so-and-so just said like 2 minutes ago. How is that different?
Yeah.
What's the change? Why didn't we listen then?"
Yes.
Just ask the question.
So what I like about this site in particular, and I have this from the Better Allies website, or Twitter feed, "I see you agree with so-and-so." If somebody repeats it, it's a nice way to say, like, "Hey, you just stole her idea." Instead of doing that, "Oh, I see you agree with what Christine said," for example. "She just said that a few minutes ago. That's a good catch." Something like that to, nicely ease your way out of it. But repeating women and giving women credit helps raise up the woman that was saying something or sharing her idea. Okay. Ask what women need. I'm generally pretty good at telling you what I need. You do have to listen. But if I don't tell you, and sometimes people of both genders, but in this case, women can be quiet and not say anything, so ask them, okay? But don't do this. Like, "Are you listening?" Outwardly, yes. It's funny. It's a comic strip, but it actually cuts really close to home in real life, because it's easy just like, I put in the FaceTime, but I'm not going to do anything about it.
Right, now I can get on with making my point.
Right, exactly, yeah, because we're thinking about the next thing, right? But ask women what they need. It seems like you're not happy at work lately. What can we do? What do you need? How can we change this? And hear without going, "Yes, but." Okay, and this is a male thing. So just listen, ask what they need, and listen. That goes back to what we said earlier. Okay. Recruit women. So we have a pipeline problem, right? Fewer people are going into tech careers, which is an issue if we want to put together diverse teams. I think many people may have heard there's a statistic that is cited, and I don't know where it came from, and I apologize for that, but that's one thing that women do as well, as I apologize for it. I don't have it. Get over it. Recruit women. So there's a pipeline problem, and we exacerbate it to a certain extent, because if they say, for example, there are 10 things that are required in a particular position, we women will say, I have 9 of those, so I'm not cut out for the job, and I'm not going to apply. The man will say, I've got 6 of those, it's in the bag, and the man is going to apply. So we have a confidence gap that we're working to overcome that we could use help with from men. So for example, do you have an example?
I don't have an example now. I was just going to say that if you're talking about recruitment, you can also talk to the agents who are working on your behalf and ask them for the type of CVs you want to see. So if you want to recruit more women, ask them to send you more female CVs. Tell them the percentages that you want to see. Give them, because otherwise they're just going to always go for, okay, this will be easy. This guy's confident. He'll probably shoo his way in there. I'll get my commission. I'll be fine.
Yeah. Another thing is, if you know that there's a positioning opening, say like, hey, Amanda, I think you'd be really good for that position. Because sometimes it takes 1 or 2 or 3 times to encourage a woman to go out and apply for a position that she's capable for, but for whatever reason, her inner voice is saying, no, I'm not there. And then chances are, when she goes and applies for it and they say, what salary are you expecting? She will lowball her own self. So as a manager, a hiring manager in a position to help, this is a good spot to say, offer the person more, offer them something that's fair. I know it's easy to say like, ooh, I can increase my budget for other things if I lowball her. If she'll take, she'll take 80,000, awesome, I'll give her 81, she'll think she's got it. But if my ceiling was 90, that's not a good move long-term to make, okay? That's not really helping diversify us, because eventually that woman's gonna probably learn that either she's making less or she'll see positions at other companies and switch and make more and take all of your knowledge out the door. Okay. Anybody know what a microaggression is? I thought I should define it before I go. So it can be something that's subtle. You might be aware that you're making it, but it's when we use different words, terminologies. I'm a mother of 2 daughters, and I say, hey guys, all the time. And I'm starting to realize, like, obviously they're not guys, but it's very ingrained, at least in colloquial American English. Hey guys, what's up? How's it going? When instead we could be changing over to, like, you know, people, humans, you can be funny about it. Hey, developers, for example.
The one that was always given to me was by Mary Scotton when I was preparing a presentation with her, and I said something about guys. And I said, well, it's very common in England to say that. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. What should I say instead? And she said, well, you said you guys. Why don't you just say you can do this? It doesn't have to be you guys. Why do you even need to do that?
Right.
Fair point.
My husband's from Texas, so he says y'all a lot. That's not something I feel comfortable saying. It's not who I am, but that's another way to get around things. So kind of think about it when you hear other people. Recognize what those microaggressions are. You know, judging. You should be good at this. Or maybe like, oh, that person's not good at this. An example that I have is a couple of years ago, again at the same company, I was delivering a solution so that we could get sign off to proceed. And I had brought along a technical lead because while I designed the solution, if they needed to get into the nitty-gritty, I was not the best person to answer to that technical level. So after we gave the presentation, the manager who was in charge of signing off, who was a female, said, that sounds fantastic, turned to my admin, who was a male, and said, when can we start? And he said, I don't know, you should ask my manager. Because that person assumed that it was the male who was the lead, I was the talker, and then this person was in charge of it. And he did the correct thing by saying, it's not me. But that's one of those little things of like, you should be the one making the decisions because you're the guy, right? What we fail to do is walk into a room like this, look at the women, for example, and say, you're just as technical. You're here because you're technical, okay? I see this a lot. Hey, Angela, will you take the notes? Because I'm a girl. Has anybody ever had that happen or made that assumption? Hey, we need to get some notes. Marge, why don't you just whip out your pen? So this is a nice spot to say, Kiera, I haven't noticed, you haven't taken notes in a while. Let's do it.
And also, it'd be another place. I mean, I will quite happily take notes in meetings that I go to because a lot of the time I'm there from more of a supervisory kind of capacity anyway. So if that's all I'm doing, then I can easily write the notes down. So volunteer as well. You don't have to wait for somebody to be asked and then push back on it. You can take that responsibility yourself. Just makes life a little easier.
Yeah, little things like that. And let's face it, nobody wants to take notes ever, right? Because it's a really tedious, boring job. But we still have to divide it around. Small things like stop gossiping. Once you start listening for examples like this, you'll hear them a lot more frequently. I've noticed that as I progress on my journey. But we have a lot of things, that just come up in everyday conversation that once you start listening, you're like, wow, probably shouldn't say that anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think a lot of people aren't saying it because they're intentionally trying to undermine somebody. It's just that's how the culture's always been, and that's what they've been able to get away with saying. So actually, again, it's important to listen, but this time you're not listening to somebody else. You're listening to what you're saying and taking note of that.
Mm-hmm. And then a final one, there's a lot of research on this about how people perceive other people, both men and women, perceiving men and women. And this is recorded, so I cleaned up my language. But there is a line between what being assertive is, like here's being assertive, Angela's being a biatch, right? Because we might be doing the same thing, but because I'm a woman, I'm not supposed to be like that. So these are kind of ingrained in our cultures when we're looking at how people are interacting. Same behavior is going to be taken differently by different people.
Absolutely. I think most men would, if they were told they were assertive, they'd think that was a really good compliment, and that kind of made them a better person. They wouldn't look at that as any kind of anything that's telling them there's any negative connotations.
Right. And it's okay to be assertive. It's okay for women to be assertive. It's okay for men to be assertive. Okay? Speak up. So when you see these things happening, it's okay to say that's not appropriate. Like, it's easy to just grimace and like, ooh, that shouldn't have happened. But nothing's going to change if people don't start saying anything. So a nice, easy way to get into it, call it out gently. We don't do that here. Say something afterwards if you're not appropriate. I'll out him. My husband was in a meeting a few years ago. He's a real estate broker. It's a very male-dominated profession as well. He was in with 2 other brokers, a male and a female, discussing a strategy. And the other male said, sometimes you just got to whip it out and show them who's bigger. In a meeting, he said that. Awkward for the girl, obviously. My husband didn't know what to say. Granted, a few years ago, this wasn't getting as much play, but that's a prime opportunity to say, that's not appropriate. That's not professional. And that does 2 things. One, it corrects the behavior of the man who said it, but it also shows the woman that you're aware that that's not cool and you're making an effort to change it, because that's actually uncomfortable. It's funny, right? Like, the last time I gave this talk, I'm like, yeah, and here's my token white male. It's funny. And everybody wants laughs, but it's not appropriate. So we have to make sure that we're starting to check ourselves as we create these environments that are more welcoming to people.
a good yardstick is if you hear something being said which kind of takes you aback and makes you think, whoa, that doesn't seem quite right. In my situation, it's probably the least effect it's having on anyone in that room. So everybody else is feeling a lot worse about that, I would imagine. Yeah. So that is the time to call it out. And even if you can't call it out at the moment, I've also called people back. Well, hang on a minute, can we just go back to what you said a moment ago, because that's not right.
Yeah.
Can I just throw in a quick question?
Yes.
So, if you're in a situation where that occurs, and the person who's made the comment is considerably senior to you, what's a good strategy for managing that without jeopardising your own position because they're senior?
So I would say for me, it does depend on how secure you feel in your own position. Because my view in most of the jobs I've had, because I'm a middle-aged white guy and I speak English and I haven't got any disabilities, is that I can easily go and work somewhere else. I can get a job a hell of a lot easier than you can replace me, so I wouldn't have any qualms regardless of the level of seniority. So I think there's that aspect of it. But I think also, it's an old phrase, isn't it? Imagine that if that was your wife, imagine if that was your daughter, would you not want someone speaking up, regardless of the fact that it might come at a slight personal cost to them? So I think I would speak up anyway. But you don't have to do it at the time. You could always, talk to them afterwards, something like that.
And I think, just kind of reflecting on your answer, I think, if you're in a position where you're, afraid to challenge that behaviour because of somebody's level, then
You can go to HR, for example, and cite it. And politics are important. Your job is important, but potentially they could do a memo of awareness. They don't have to say, "Hey, in this meeting, this is what happened," but general memos. There are different ways to treat that, and it has to be within your comfort level as well. I can't clarify this enough because each of us are going to be in different pieces of our journey, different parts of our journey. Okay. All right. So as we wrap it up, call to action. You're here obviously because you want to learn a little bit more. How do you do this? Where do you start? So look for it. See it, big thing. Just start to become aware. Open your mind that this could be happening.
I'd say the biggest thing for me is this: don't interrupt, listen, don't be a man-interrupter. Which isn't because I particularly want to talk over anyone or make them look bad or anything like that. It's just that I'm so excited that I've got something to say. I really need to get it out there. However, it doesn't have to happen at the cost to everybody else. There will come a point, even if everyone wants to move on, I will then say, well, hang on a minute, I just want to make my point on that. Mine doesn't have to be more valuable just because I'm really excited and have never really had to control myself in those situations before.
Okay. So our advice is start your journey. There's a test called the implicit bias, and when these slides go out, I'll include the link. Harvard put together something where when I took it, I was actually disappointed at what my score was, because these are things, they're implicit. We don't realize that they're happening, which makes it a little bit more of a challenge to change this behavior. But it's really interesting to take this test and see where you fall on that spectrum. But basically, listen, start speaking up. If you're just grimacing when things happen, you're not making a difference.
Yeah, that's the thing. Passive ally, general well-wishers who don't say anything, not really helping very much.
Yeah. So to share, I debated putting this up here. It's from a Twitter feed called Man Who Has It All. What I like about it is he takes titles that you might see in Cosmo, for example, and switches it and gives it a male take, which makes it ludicrous. So while we women have been brought up since teenagers with Teen Vogue saying, hey, you're getting up early, now's the time to feed the dog and get eggs from the chickens, me time, while your husband's sleeping, he spins it. So it's just eye-opening and illuminating, and I think that's a good, even comical place to start. And then the other Twitter feed I like is Better Allies, which basically, you'll recognize some of the images. It goes over what people can do to help be a better ally to those around us. So I recommend following at least Better Allies. If you're just kind of scrolling through the internet, you've got some time. Man Who Has It All is pretty funny because he has a nice way of illuminating some of the differences that we're struggling with. And I think that gives you a few things to work on. These slides will be up, and any questions? We've got 30 seconds. Okay, so speak fast. Yes.
So obviously, you're talking about your daughter and the classes that she goes to. It seems to me like, there's a lot that we can do. It seems like we kind of have to tackle the problem a lot earlier.
Yes.
How can we kind of contribute to that? How can we encourage that, outside of business? What do you think that needs to change to help things start at that really low level?
Volunteer in schools. I don't know how it is in England. In the United States, budgets are being cut all the time. So being able to have role models up there, teachers are overwhelmed with what they have to teach as part of the class, but to be able to go in and speak for an hour, do hour of code, maybe volunteer in some kind of computer program after school. I do one every spring for 2 hours on a Friday called Code Academy. We literally take Hour of Code's curriculum have snacks, recess, run around. But try to introduce it to the younger kids so they have a better idea before they get into middle school and start cycling out.
I'd say if you're going to do that, do it through a company name, something like that. Do it through your company. Middle-aged guy turns up at a school saying he'd like to help young girls get on the internet.
Right.
Probably
You'll
going to
need
be
a background check.
problematic.
Yeah. Yeah. But volunteering and making it look fun is a good start. All right. Any other questions? I feel the hook coming. Okay. Thank you so much.